SmartMet, you can create your own parameters that you can visualize using the data you have available. So you can, for example, create the average temperature of 2 different models, which is not originally available from the models themselves. And this is done using this SmartTool dialog. So when you open it, it's this light bulb in the toolbar. It should look something like this. Here, in the macro text part, you need to write down some scripting language, which is called SmartTool. So it's SmartMet's own scripting language or programming language. And here in the Macroparameters section at the bottom of this window, you need to save your macroparameters or remove them or do some modifications if you want. And macroparameters are those new parameters you want to create and visualize. For example, the average temperature of 2 different models. Before you write down any code, you need to know how you are referring to the parameters you want to use. So, temperature is T, and if you want to refer to a specific model, for example GFS, you have to use underscore. And GFS's abbreviation is GFS. And if you want to use pressure data, so you want to use the GFS temperature from a model level or pressure level in this case, you need to use another underscore, and you can define it like this. So now you are using GFS temperature from the level of 850 hectopascals. There is another way of doing the exactly same thing, so it doesn't matter which way around these are. So it's either model producer and the level, or the level and the model producer. For ECMWF data, you should use EC instead of ECMWF. If you are using only T, like this, then you are referring to the edited temperature. And if you are not doing editing in your country, you should always refer to the model you want to use. For example, if we want to calculate the average temperature of ECMWF and GFS, we can do it. So, if we want to create a new parameter out of that, which we need to do, we need to use the word var in front of that. So var stands for variable, and you need to define the new variable using that. And then you give it a name. I can name it as a temp. And then I need to give it a value. So I want to have T of GFS plus T EC. And I need to use parentheses. And then I can divide it by 2. In order for this to give a result or show something on the map, I need to say also result. So result equals 10. Now I need to save it first. So save as macroparameter. So if you don't want to override anything, you need to save it as a new one. So save as macroparameter, and then give it a name using this Windows own saving system. Just make sure that you are in the right folder. Here, give it a very good name because it's the name that is then visible in the gray box. Save it. And I already have the parameter like that, so I can replace it. So remember, the macroparameters are saved from this part of the dialog or used from this part of the dialog. If you use the upper part, so save as save load, it's for editing and it's doing a different thing. And then at the very bottom there are numbers 1, 2, 3, 1 meaning main map view, 2 meaning map view 2, and 3 meaning map view 3. These are the rows. So I can use my main map view, visible here on the left hand side, and then I will add the macro parameter to the row number 1, and I just click. And as you can see, Now the creation of my new parameter is there, and now you can treat it as a normal parameter. You can change the drawing properties as you like. For example, like this. I can make it a little bit smaller, and I can change the color to be, for example, pink. The T that I have now here is for pure ECMWF, but now the T that I'm currently visualizing in the pink is the average of GFS and ECMWF. If you are getting an error text, see what it says and try to figure out the error. Sometimes the error messages can be a little bit cryptic, but you can always go back to the manual and see how the language should be used. If you want to modify existing macroparameter, you can open it using the dialog in the bottom. So, for example, here it's in Finnish, but it's now telling you the total accumulation of precipitation in 24 hours of the model ECMWF. So here is the code snippet result equals sum t, so a sum over time steps 0, 23, so overall 24 hours, and RR equals precipitation rate, so it's the same as precipitation intensity of the model ECMWF. You can see the formula of how to use this kind of calculation from the manual. But this can be very easily visualized, so once again I can use row number 1 and add it there. And here you can see 24 hours from this point onward. One more basic thing in SmartTool language is conditional expressions. So you can compare and you can have conditions. That's very useful as it's part of every single programming language there is. So, for example, if I want to increase the temperatures at the area where there is high wind speeds, I can do that. So first I will put the ECMWF temperature visible again and hide the two macroparameters we have created. Then I can write down if. You need to use parentheses, and then you need to use curly brackets. Here you write down your condition, so if wind speed, so WS, is larger than, let's say, 5 meters per second, and I want to use ECMWF, not the edited version. So ECMWF is larger than 5 meters per second. The result equals TEC, so ECMWF temperature, plus 10 degrees, so that we can see the difference. And then I need to save it. I will choose my folder. And then I will add it to my view. But this time I'm going to do it in a different way, because if you are using another rows than from 1 to 5, let's say 6, you need to add it different way. So right click, add macroparameters, and then you can try to find your folder. So you can treat it as a normal parameter. This parameter does not make any sense, but you can see that it works. So when the wind speed is larger than 5 meters per second, it will increase the ECMWF temperature by 10 degrees, and then it's visualizing this temperature that has been already increased. If we put it in the text format and maybe make it a little bit smaller, and then we can compare it with the first row where we have the normal temperature. So I'm switching between row number 1, clicking the keyboard 1, and clicking the number 6 from the keyboard. So I'm just switching between, and you can see that it works. There are also else if, else, and or. So you can use else if, and then you also have else. For else if, you have to define once again your condition, but for else you must not do that. More of this and how you can use this you can find from the manual.